What's going on, guys? Fish here again from Reignite TV, and welcome to the third and final part of my series about having an attitude for God. If you haven't seen the last two, go ahead and check them out in the playlist. All three of them are going to be here, including this one, so the last two are there as well. And now, I want to end this part on talking about complaining and why we're not supposed to do it. Not based on the obvious, like, complaining's bad, but as I said in the first part, quoting Philippians 2:14, it says, "Do all things without complaining and disputing." God doesn't like it when we complain. God's working all this stuff in our lives, and when we complain about stuff, it's just really, I assume God's going, just really, what's going on? Why are you complaining? I'm working in your life here. Especially after we give ourselves to Christ. It's just, and we all know the verse, all things work together for the good of those who love God. It's all things. Even goes in to say, if you're going through trials, it says, Paul actually writes about praising the trials and how he loves the trials, which is a different sermon for a different time. But when we complain, we're actually saying, God, you're not doing a good job. God, you're not doing this right. This is how it should be. Which, obviously, we have no idea what's going on. His thoughts are higher than ours. His ways are higher than ours. So definitely think about that next time we complain. But this week I want to go take a look at the verse, 1 Corinthians 10:10. Now the whole chapter of 1 Corinthians 10 talks about Old Testament examples of basically what not to do as Christians when Paul's writing to the new church, or at least in Corinth in this case. And in verse 10 it says, "Nor complain, as some of them also complained, and they were destroyed by the destroyer." That's bad, especially when you look at the Old Testament of what happened when people complained. The whole Israel trip from Egypt to the Promised Land was just full of complaining if you read Exodus. Ever since basically they left Egypt, all the Israelites did was complain. First it was about Pharaoh catching up to them, and then it was about not having food, and then it just went on and on and on, just everyone complaining to Moses and to God, saying, we were better off back in Egypt, back when we were slaves. But this is something that God was doing in their lives, obviously leading them from Egypt to the Promised Land. And actually, I believe 1 Corinthians 10:10 actually comes from in Exodus. I can't remember which chapter, but there's a guy who rallies a bunch of people against Moses and against God. They're complaining about how Moses isn't doing a good job leading, and how they only have manna and all that other stuff. So basically what happens is that while they're complaining and rebelling, God basically opens up a giant hole from underneath them. They all fall in it, and then the ground closes up. That's bad. Needless to say, that is really bad. Just having the whole earth just open up, you fall in, and then close up on top of you. And that's what God did because they complained. And now I'm not saying, don't complain or that's going to happen to you. I hope it doesn't happen to you. I really don't, especially if you do complain, because I complain a lot myself, and I hope that doesn't happen to me or to you. But that's one of the things why complaining is so bad, because it also has a negative effect on our lives. When we complain, especially out in public, and people know we're Christians, it kind of leaves a bad taste in our mouth of Christianity in general. It's just like, well, he claims to be a Christian, but he's complaining about all the stuff just like I am. We're the same thing. It doesn't matter. But at the same time, no matter what's going on in our lives, we're not necessarily not be angry about it, but have a willingness to serve and to do it. I actually remember hearing a sermon about how Israel took 40 years to take an 11-day trip, basically going around in circles, going from Egypt to the Promised Land, only because they complained. They complained about, again, Pharaoh catching up to them. They complained about how the giants in the Promised Land were bigger and stronger than they were, even though they saw the Promised Land. I mean, they had giant bushels of grapes that took 2 men to carry, and yet they still didn't go because they were so afraid and just complained the whole time. And it took them 40 years to get out of the wilderness. Now, I've been talking about why it's bad to complain, but let me talk about why it's good not to complain. Actually, in Joshua, who's the person that took control after Moses. Actually, one of his first major accomplishments was actually taking down the walls of Jericho. And it wasn't by force, and it wasn't by fighting or anything like that. And I mean, most of us know the story. He walked around, or him and Israel walked around the wall one time a day for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, walked around the wall 7 times, and then blew their trumpets and yelled as loud as they could, and the walls came down. You know, I remember also another sermon about why they kept their mouth shut. Why God told them not to say anything during this time. Because it's very easy to complain, especially when God's telling you to do something as ridiculous as walk around a wall and expect it to fall. I mean, literally shouting at a wall. I mean, come on. Has anyone ever done that? I mean, besides reading it from the Bible, has anyone actually seen or done that? No, I didn't think so. I can't even see you out there on the other side of the screen, but I know you're not raising your hand. But if they actually complained, they would give up and lose hope and just quit. They would just probably quit after day 3 or so. Be like, this is dumb. Let's try to take the wall by force. And probably get slaughtered. Now, obviously, what I'm trying to say, or I'm not trying to say do that, but what I'm trying to say is don't complain when stuff isn't going right in your life, or when God tells you to do something crazy, or even if just unexpected stuff comes up. You know, if you're in school and you get maybe a pop quiz, don't complain. Be like, oh man, more pop quizzes? Really, teacher? Come on. But at the same time, you don't have to be like, oh boy, pop quizzes, they're my favorites. But just be like, all right, well, let's knock this out. Praise God. Same thing at home. If your parents, you know, maybe give you a bit more chores, you know, have a willingness to serve and to do that, not complain. You know, get what I'm saying? We actually hinder what God's doing in our lives if we complain about what God's doing in our lives. A lot of times, God doesn't just work like that. You know, it takes process and time and just a willingness to be like, all right, God, I totally trust you in this. Here you go. And that's what I want to leave you with. Just have a willingness to just trust God. Be like, all right, I can't see where this is going, God, but I trust you. I'm just going to follow you. I'm not going to complain, and I'm going to have complete faith that you're going to bring me where you want me to go. All right, guys, thanks for watching. This has been an awesome series so far. The next few weeks, I'm just going to do kind of like one message type things, not really series. But I am working on something pretty cool right now. I can't tell you what it is yet. It's going to be a cool surprise when it comes out. But hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys had a great New Year's Eve and an even better 2014. I'll talk to you guys later.